times more than what I made, but I saved a lot of guys' careers and a lot of wealthy guys that or the DAs got their own airplanes and stuff, where I still have to take the bus.
Why did you think it was a joke?
It's a glorified pitch hitter, to be honest with you. Back then, nobody ever felt that the D's was ever going to be in existence. 38 years later, it was basically a pitch hitter. But if you look at it now, it's a position player. It's I think it's great for the game of baseball. 50% of the people love it, 50% of the people hate it. So that's why it's a very, very controversial thing, and that's why the DH, where I wrote my book, is designated Hebrew, and the DH designated hitter. They can never take it away.
Should there be a place in Cooperstown for a player that's been a DH?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You look at relief pitchers. Nobody thought relief pitchers should be in the Hall of Fame. One day it will be. I think Edgar Martinez probably maybe the closest guy. You look at Reggie Jackson. You look at Paul Molitor. They had more home runs than it gave them a lot more opportunities to get into the Hall of Fame. But I think there will be eventually somebody from the DH. Oh, absolutely. I think the closest is going to be probably Edgar Martinez.
That's right. Question. Do you remember your first plate appearance as a DH?
Against Louis Tiana. We lost the ball game 15-5. But it's there, and they're never going to take it away.
Well, let me tell you something. That was 10 years ago. Look how young I was. Look how old I am now. But that's okay. Hey, at least we got somebody into the Hall of Fame. At least we got Edgar. And I just wanted to tell you that we got somebody great today. And I'm going to tell him a little bit of story before I leave, how his father hated me at the end. But I got to tell you one thing. Billy, I want to introduce you to Governor Patterson of New York, the former governor of New York, Joe Garrido, and Lenny Cosberg. And they're the greatest people in the world. And whenever you come up to New York, all these guys would take you out to dinner. So you don't have to worry about anything. But first thing, what I want to do before we even get involved with the show, I want to thank everybody. Today was my release day of my book. And I have been so busy. And, it's been so fun. And I made so many friends. And, people have purchased my book and they love the book. It's a great book, but it's just not for me. It's putting the big C into the Hall of Fame, and that's Thurman Munson. And I know that Billy's father was such a big fan of Thurman. They're the two types of guys that they were each year apart when they out on the field. And I'm going to do everything I possibly can to get them in. And I want to thank y'all from the bottom of my heart for making this a very, very, very successful opening of my book. And thank you to Wall Street Journal. And thank you for Robert Dominguez to do the big article and the beautiful article in the Daily News. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody. And Brian Hout, thank you very much for the in the Yankee paper. And I'm doing a lot of stuff tomorrow. But thank y'all. But what I like to do tonight is, Billy, I know that we got a lot of things to talk to you about. I know that Governor Patterson has an awful lot of things to talk to you about because he loved your father, but he's a Met fan. But he loved, everybody loved your father. Your father was the Billy Martin, the second baseman. To me, it was Billy, it was Bobby Richardson, and Willie Randolph. Those are the three guys. And Torres is going to be eventually, hopefully, he'll go back to second base. But anyway, what I like to do now is, Gov, is to talk to Billy. And I know that you got a lot of questions to talk to him about.
Well, kind of like you, Billy, I grew up around a father who was very well known and a real personality, and everybody was always kind of excited about him. And so as you were growing up, how did you feel about the relationship? Because I grew up behind my father in politics, and all I wanted to do was get as far away from it as possible so that I wouldn't have to, every time I did something right, they would say, well, you're a chip off the old block. And then when I did something wrong, it was like, oh, you're such a disappointment. So I felt I could never win.
I understand that completely. I love the game, but as a kid, I would go to Mickey Mantle Jr.'s baseball games in Dallas, right? And I hear men in the stands say, oh, he's no dadgum Mickey Mantle. And really, when you think about it, how many major leaguers were Mickey Mantle?
Yeah, exactly.
But I would hear that. And so, it resonated with me. It always made me think about that. Am I ever going to be able to, hold up my end of the deal being my father's son? And, but I also played football and soccer. And even in college, I also played soccer. And I think that was kind of my escape. I wasn't near as good at it, but I wasn't Billy Martin Jr. in those other sports. I just got to be me.
Right.
And so I get it. But, I have so much pride in who my father was, and that eventually, leaves. And I still try to play in the men's 50 and over leagues if I can, just because I love the game so much.
Billy, that was the thing. I never really had problems with my father. It was just how I was viewed by outsiders.
Absolutely.
And you told the story about Mickey Mantle Jr. playing and what the people in the stands were saying. It reminded me that I had a next door neighbor. She was, my parents' age, but I was still living next door to her. She had this party. It was mostly adults, and I was 22 or 23, and they said to me, "What are you doing?" And this woman said to me, not the next door neighbor, but one of the guests at the party said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm in law school." And she said, "You want to be a lawyer?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, why would you want to be a lawyer? You can never hope to be the man your father was." I wanted to punch this woman, but I didn't. And but I kind of thought she looked young enough that she was probably around 25 years later when I got elected governor. And I wondered if she watched the show that day.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's I don't know. There were so many different things like that. My senior year in baseball, my father only got to come see one of my games because obviously he had a job and he was managing the Oakland A's at the time. And he literally was late to his own game against the Texas Rangers so that he could see my one high school game he was able to come to.
That was great.
It was, but my coach put me in left field. I'd never played that position in my life. I played 87% of my games at second base, a little bit of short, a little bit of third. He also batted me in the 3-hole, which I'd never done my whole high school career. I was 1 or 2 if I was going good, 7 or 8 if I was in a funk.
Right.
And I still to this day don't know why he did it. Was he trying to make me fail? Was he just messing with me? I was 5 for 5 that day. I had my best game my whole 3 years. Yeah, because I knew my coach wouldn't have the what to yell at me that day because my father was there and would have beaten him up. But it was goofy. People don't really realize all the different sides of it when you have a famous father. I had the pleasure of meeting George W. Bush, and the first time I met him, he gave me the half hug when we met. And my friend said, "Oh, I didn't know you already knew him." I said, "No, but he understands. I might understand just a little bit what it's like to walk a mile in his moccasins."
Right. Billy, when I became governor of New York, I became governor differently than any other governor in the history of the world. I became governor in 2008 because the governor, whose name was Elliot Spitzer, got caught with a prostitute. So they tell me this crazy story. They tell me, like in 2 hours, you're going to be governor. So I go and I take a shower. I come out the shower and the phone rings. I go and I answer the phone. I've got like a towel on. And they said, my chief of staff says to me, listen, David, President Bush is going to call to wish you well in 5 minutes. So I'm hustling to get dressed, but because for some reason I think I should be dressed when the president calls. Like I'd never talked to a president on the phone. And it's not like he was FaceTiming me or something. He couldn't see me, but I thought I wanted to be totally have my suit on and my tie when he called, and he calls. And I pick up the phone and he goes, how you doing up there? I'm like, I guess I'm doing all right. He said, well, my people tell me that you're going to do fine. So I said, well, with all due respect, Mr. President, you've been wrong before. Maybe your people are wrong. So I now think that this isn't President Bush. I think this is my staff trying to get me to calm down. So they have, someone call up and imitate him to, get me to relax. And I'm about to say something to him. And he says to me, have you been to that beautiful mansion that the governor lives in? And I said, yes, I have. He said, did you see the picture of me in the guest room? And I said, no, I've only been on the first floor. I never got to the residential quarters. He says, well, when you go there today, look me up. I'm the only governor that ever, from Texas. I'm the only governor. I was the only president, that ever stayed in the governor's mansion of New York. And then it hits me. This is President Bush. And I was about to say some stuff, like in that movie, The American President, about to say like the wrong thing. But as I grew to know him as governor, and then afterwards, he is a pisser. He is the funniest person. He says what he wants to say. And I think the biggest mistake that was made with President George W. Bush is that the people around him wouldn't let him be himself. And the American people had a different impression of him than the person that he really is.
Absolutely. And another person who didn't really want to follow in Dad's footsteps.
Right.
He thought Jeb was going to do all that stuff, and he was happy as a businessman and owning the Texas Rangers, and was a huge baseball fan, and really kind of had to give all that up to follow in Dad's footsteps.
Yeah.
Do you live down in Texas now?
Yes.
Really? We're in Texas, Dallas?
I'm in Arlington, right in the middle of Dallas-Fort Worth.
Yeah. Right next to, it used to be a place where we used to stay called the Inns of Six Flags. Remember that?
Yes, sir.
Is that still there? It's by the amusement park, Six Flags?
Six Flags is still there. As a kid growing up in Arlington, Six Flags was like daycare for us because we all got a season's pass, and somebody's mom would load us all up in the station wagon and drop us off, and somebody else's mom would pick us up in the van later. That was pretty much all summer if you were a kid in Arlington, Texas.
Where did you go to school, college?
Texas Tech.
Oh, Texas Tech, pretty good football team y'all had for the last couple of years.
Yeah, pretty good baseball team too.
Real good baseball.
Great job.
You said you had your guy. Tell the people. I think this is very interesting. You've been an agent for how long, Billy?
Well, Dave Pepe, Phil Pepe's son, and I started an agency called Pro Agents back in 1995. And we both had clients and call each other up and kind of, help each other out. And a law firm hired us to kind of start the baseball side of Pro Agents. And we've been doing a long time. It's mutated. The game's ever changing, as you notice. Some of it's good, some of it's not, in my opinion. But doing what we do is a curse and a blessing. You're investing in a tragedy with most guys. More kids don't make it than do.
Right.
If you look at the statistics, less than 9% of drafted players make it to the major leagues. Less than 15% have 4 years in the big leagues.
Yeah.
So, most of the guys you deal with are not, and you have to have that talk. What's next? What are you going to do? Time to go back to school. And, that's no fun. Obviously, the ones that do make it and live that life, and as well as anybody how great that life can be to play on the biggest stage with the greatest athletes in the world. I love the relationships. I love keeping up with my old players. I literally have, relationships of guys that I represented that I can't believe are in their 40s now. So it's a new world.
People don't realize how tough it really is. People think because they gave you X amount of dollars that it's an automatic way to the big leagues. It's not. It's so hard, and people don't realize. Back when we played, I signed in '67. We had mostly, instead of college kids, we had mostly high school kids that got drafted by the teams. And people didn't realize that the first step that you make being a rookie, they give you $500 a month to live on. Plus, whenever you made road trips, they gave you like $3 or $2 a day for meal money. People don't realize that. And people, there's so many guys nowadays that are, they get from Cuba, they get from Dominican, and these guys are so hungry. They're so hungry that, when they get off the plane or they get off the boat to come to Miami, they are lucky to have a pair of shoes. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely.
They're lucky to have a pair of shoes. And, and the Yankees or the Tigers or the Mets or the Rangers, it's not easy for these kids to adapt to the life of baseball. And, it's changed so much since the days that, your father was my manager. And, and I don't know if your father could have taken baseball the way it is now. I don't think he could have. Billy, there's no way. Your father loved to play the real game of baseball. He loved to run. He loved the small ball, and he knew how to generate runs. He didn't have to wait for that 7th inning where they lose him by 3 runs and they try to get a 3-run home run. And, your father, and you look at these guys, the managers that we had, like a Ralph Houck, like a Earl Weaver, or your father,
Walt Alston.
Yeah, Walt Alston. They could not have survived this brand of baseball. And, you've seen the changes of it. Now you have seen the just playing baseball and the analytics of in the game of baseball. Do you like the analytics in the game of baseball?
Okay. And people ask me this and say that a lot. I like having the information. I know my father would have loved to have had all that information. But that said, he's still going to go by his gut and do what he wants to do. He's still going to steal. He's still going to lay down bunts. He's still going to try to put pressure on the other team, and he'd listen sometimes, but much of the time he would have just done what he thought was right. And so, you're right. He couldn't manage a team where he has had to just go by the analytics. He would have still done his own thing much of the time. And, it's funny, this year I've already seen more bunts than it seemed like I've seen in the last couple of years. And I don't know if guys are maybe working on it a little bit more because they're going to start guys off with a guy on second base, in extra innings now. And, who's not going to want to bunt that guy over? I mean, it's going to be an interesting year.
Oh, if I would have played for man on second base and no outs right off the bat, I want the guy to bunt in front of me because I'm going to drive that guy in.
Right.
I'm going to drive him in at least 8 out of 10 times. Believe me, I'm going to drive that guy in. And that's a ribby for us. And ribbies back then was your salary drive. Nowadays, they don't even look at ribbies anymore. They look at, home runs now. It's a game of strikeouts. It's you watch the guys, two guys, two teams out there, they might have 25, 27 strikeouts between the two teams. And, how much playing time do they really have? And the guys, and I just started doing Facebook, Billy, and these guys talk about they hate a guy that's starting on second base. It's like Sunday baseball, And now they're talking about moving pitcher's mound back a foot.
Oh,
how are they going to do that? How the guys, where they trained, how they going to throw an extra foot, and they've been training their whole lives, the pitcher's mound the way it is now, and now they're going to go back 6 inches to a foot. How can they do that?
That's one of the beauties of this game that's been here for hundreds of years now.
Yeah.
That the beauty of it was even back when it was invented. If there was a ball hitting the hole and the shortstop backhanded it and threw it across the diamond, he'd get the guy out by this much. And now today's players are bigger, stronger, faster. They all throw harder. But guess what? That ball hit in the same spot. That shortstop makes that play. Derek Jeter jumps up and throws it across the infield. And guess what? He still gets them by just that much.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of the game to me. And let's not change any of the things Abner Doubleday made up, because these inches of the game, they did right. And that's why we love it. And that's why we're here talking about it right now.
Like, slide into second base. You can't slide into second base. You can't come close to him. That was the best part of the game. When you slid into second base, break up a double play, you go back to the dugout, that manager is up there and say, great play. It gives you that like that. And then the catcher has a ball. You run around third base. The catcher barely has the ball and you hit him. Like that. That was a game of baseball. And nowadays, these guys hit a home run. They throw the ball, they throw the bat up 20 feet up in the air, and they jumping around what do you think? Where were your father? Hey, Nolan Ryan, what would you have done? Catfish and, Bob Gibson. Oh, he would have told him, I'm never going to forget when your father went out there. I'm never going to forget. I was out there, and your father came out there. I was at first base, playing first base, and Thurman comes out. Sparky was pitching, and your father said, "What I forgot who the hitter was and what team we're playing. I'm never gonna forget." And he wanted to drill this guy. He said, "I want you to hit him in the head, like that." I'm never gonna forget. He said, "I want you to drill him right here, like that," because but that's what he was, and but he was good. He hit him right in the back like that. And when he comes back to the dugout, Billy jumps on it. It jumps down his throat. Why did you hit him in the head like that? But that was, that was a game of baseball. And, and we grew up with that. And now it's not, and it's sad that the game of baseball has gone to this. And you see it, you get these guys, there's so many guys out there, they really, they got everything. They entitled to everything, and they got this arm pad, and they got this arm pad. They got more stuff than football players. Hey, that's what it is.
I think that what has happened is, I had an incident about 10 years ago, and I can't remember his name, but he was a catcher for the Giants, and he got run over at a play at home plate. And that led to you can't run over the catcher anymore.
You're talking about Buster Posey?
Buster Posey got run over. And then in the 2015 championship series between the Dodgers and the Mets, it was the guy who used to play second for the Phillies. He broke the Mets shortstop's leg.
Chase Utley.
Chase Utley did it.
Yeah.
And that changed the rule at second. You can't change decades of rules based on a single incident with no. It's not. I had no feelings for the fact that the two players got hurt, but that kind of thing happened so uniquely that it really hadn't happened in a long time since those two incidents. But those two incidents changed the game, and with the shift and the much higher number of strikeouts, when you see a rundown, the players don't even know how to conduct it anymore. Or if you see a relay throw to home plate, these guys are missing the cutoff man.
Oh, about 20 feet.
Yeah.
About 20 feet. Yeah, it's changed an awful lot. Now, tell us about your pitcher that you had tonight. Billy, what about your pitcher? He hasn't pitched all year, and they gave him a start.
So yeah, that's why I'm sitting in my truck right now. He's a true freshman at TCU, and you know, with COVID and all the rules, being a freshman in college now, you're like a high school senior on the baseball team because they've got all their returning players from last year, including the seniors. So there's 23, 24-year-olds, you know, playing college baseball right now. And this kid hasn't played all year. He hasn't gotten to throw one pitch. And he's super athletic. This kid could play D1 football also. He's such a good wide receiver. And I literally haven't seen him pitch in 2 years. Well, he gets a call from Jim Slosnagel, the TCU head coach, this morning, and says, "Oh, guess what? You're starting tonight's game." And their pitching coach has been working with him a little bit and had his arm slot drop down a little bit, has him doing a little bit of both. And he gave up one run in the first 2 innings on an error. I don't think it should be earned, but obviously I had to run out here and be with you guys, so I don't know how he's done after that. But I just couldn't believe it. He haven't pitched all year, and he throws him out there to start today's game.
Is he on
How
a
many
pitch count?
innings was he going to pitch tonight?
I have no idea. He had no idea. They didn't tell him anything. I was shocked. I sent him a text, just, you know, good luck. Go stick it where the sun doesn't shine. And I got a yes, sir, with exclamation points back at me. I couldn't believe it. But I'm sitting with his father. His father's so nervous. I'm worried he's going to have an accident.
Hey, Ron, when you were talking about people flipping the bat 20 feet up in the air. So last week in a game, a guy on the Mets hit a home run to tie the game in the bottom of the 9th inning. He flipped the bat like he had won the game. He's running around the bases like the game is over. The game is still going. That's one thing if the game's over and somebody, you know, celebrates or something like that, but the game was still going on. And it reminds me of these football players that they'll break up a pass and they're jumping up and down like they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Feet on the next play for a touchdown.
Yeah. You look at them, you know, like they shouldn't have done that. They made a great play. They're out there to make plays like that.
Yeah.
You know, because you get a base hit, you get a home run once in a while and you flip your bat. You know, you don't do that. I mean, you know, hey, that's, you know, I mean, that's unheard of. I mean, I think that's the worst thing that they can do now is, you know, that's worse than not coming in. You can't even come in close to a hitter now. But these guys, you know, as soon as they hit the ball, they look over to their bench and they pump at their arms like this. He runs to first base. He gets on second base. He takes his hat off like that. He runs around third base and he gets home, jumps up in the air. Yeah.
Ron, it's Lenny in the control. Sorry to interrupt. Randy Miller of the Newark Star, I don't know, the Star Ledger wants to drop in and say hello.
Great.
I figure any publicity is good publicity, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, those guys need to start acting like they've been there before, right?
Absolutely. Randy,
Hello.
wait, say, big guy, this is Ron Bloomberg. This is Joe Garrido. This is Billy Martin Jr. That's Governor Patterson.
Nice to meet you guys.
Yeah.
Got your Yankee gear on there?
Yeah.
I'm watching the game from home because it's all Zoom calls.
What's the score?
It's 1-1. They actually scored a run tonight. How about that?
Who scored?
Urshela had a home run.
No, well, last time I saw him, he hit a double. Now he hit a home run.
Yes. And Charlie Morton's dealing tonight.
Yeah, he throws pretty good. He has pretty good stuff.
He does.
He has pretty good stuff. But let me tell you something. If you look at man for man of the Yankee team, you know, everybody's down on them. They throwing balls and batteries and all that stuff. You know what? Hey, you know, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And I know that it's just 15 games. And I know it's tough out there. And I know that they're under so much pressure because they haven't played in front of fans. And it's not easy. But they got too much talent. And they're going to eventually start winning games. And they're going to start winning. They're, you know, I mean, they got the horses. Now they just have to have one or two little bloop singles. And Billy would tell you this: once you get a few bloop singles, if you are like 0 for 40, now you're in a hitting streak, right? Right, Billy?
Absolutely.
Oh
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
you can have those little bloop singles, and then all of a sudden, hey, you know, I mean, I've been there. You know, I know how it is, and you know, and it is what it is. It's a game of athletics now. And,
That's what I was going to ask you. I was just got off the phone with Sparky Lau, and if the Yankees lose tonight, they will be 5-11 for the first time since the 72 Yankees. You guys recovered that year to have a winning season. Houck was the manager. Mercer had a big year. You had a good year. I think you had 3 guys pitching 250 innings. But
Correct.
I was curious what you remember about that team. I mean, that was pre-Steinbrenner, so I'm sure it was a little different. But you guys recovered, and this would be the worst Yankee start since 72.
Randy, was that the first year of the DH?
No, 73.
No, the first year of the DH was 74, right?
No,
74.
73. April the
73.
6th, 73. If
Yeah,
I
so you're
missed
playing
that,
first base.
yeah. But we had that team. You know, that year we got Sparky for Danny Cater. We got Danny Cater then. CBS they owned the team. They
Right.
really didn't put a lot of money into that game, but we started getting a few other ball players. We had more seasoning. We got Sparky. That was a big spark on our team. You had Mel Stottlemyre. You had Fritz Peterson. You know, you had these guys. There was really good ball players. And you had Mercer, you had Roy White, and people like that.
A lot of veterans. Felipe Alou was on that team.
Felipe, we're just coming around and having a few extra ball players. And Ralph was a great manager. I mean, he was the best manager. Not saying because Billy's here and stuff, but you know, because I just played with Billy for a couple of years. But Ralph, I played with him for 6 years, and he was you know, I mean, I started off with him, and he was a low-mannered guy, and then all of a sudden you get Billy, and then you get like 360. It's a total 360 change.
I bet.
And but it was fun. No, let me tell you something. You know, managers, you know, people put a lot of pressures on managers. The managers do not play the game. Okay. We're the players. We play the games. Okay. They're the ones that put our names on the lineup cards. Okay. We have the slumps. They take the blame for it. They can't hit for us. The only thing that in 72, we did not have a hitting coach. Our hitting coach was Elston Howard. And if you go into a slump, the first thing he said, just throw the ball up in there and hit it one time and you're out of a slump. And he will always say to me, Randy, he always say, see the ball, swing and hit it. It was no computers, no analytics. It was a game of baseball because when we played baseball, and you probably played, you know, you're from up around here. You play stickball, okay?
I played high school, yeah.
Yeah, you played high school. Hey, you see the ball and you swing and you hit it. It was no computers. You got to hold your arm up like this and this and this and whatever. And your mind is think about this. You know, when your mind has too much to think about, And people, kids come up to me, and if I go to a high school game, and I live in Roswell, Georgia, really big high school baseball down here. And, if the Yankees will contact me and they say, I want you to go see this guy at this high school or whatever, first thing the parents will say, guys, I know who you are, like that. My son, he wants $1 million to sign. You look at him, you say, what does he do? Well, my son hit 15 home runs, and he hit, he struck out 25 guys in 9 innings like that. And he's a best ball player. And you laugh because they don't understand that when you take all the athletes all across the country, you got to be better than these guys. And you got to be, you got to be lucky. You got to be at the right place at the right time. And you got to be good. And you got to have heart. And a lot of these guys don't have it up here. And Billy would tell you, a lot of these guys, and you see so many great athletes, football players, basketball players, and when they get to the free throw line, and when they have to make 2 shots to win a ball game or to tie the ball game, and when there's a third guy on third base with 2 outs, and you got to bring that guy in because they used all the pinch hitters, and you got to get up that base hit. It's people think it's easy to do. When you're sitting in the stands and the ball looks like 40 miles an hour slower to her, rather than the ball is like he throws a heavy ball and he sinks and he throws a knuckle curve and he throws a slide and he throws a fastball that rises, a sink. People don't understand how hard it is. And the game of athletics, it's just not baseball. You got to adjust. If you don't adjust, you're not successful. And the people are talking because my book just came out today, Randy. I don't know if you knew that.
I got it in the mail last week.
Did you read it yet?
I have not read it yet, but I've worked about 12 days in a row and went to a funeral and had some stuff going on. But I
You like it.
have it sitting on my dining room
You
table.
like it. No. I'm not telling you this because it's my book. You like the book. Okay. But
I love your era baseball, so I like it.
Oh, it's a great cover with the baseball cards with Thurman.
I
And
saw that. I
it's
have
fun.
probably 500,000 cards in my house.
Oh yeah, no, and people don't understand that, and you understand the game of baseball, and and it's so much pressure, and if you could be successful in New York, and you could be successful anywhere, and you take the guys now that are playing, and I scouted Cliff Frazier when he was in high school down in Georgia.
I was in his house for a few days. When they got him, I spent a couple of days with his family, his high school coach. I know the Frazier family pretty well.
Oh yeah, no, and he's a great athlete.
Loganville.
Yeah, he's a great athlete. He's his hands are quick as so quick, really pretty. But he's a type of a player that needs to play. Randy, he has to play, and he's not a guy that you're going to platoon him and sit him out for 2 or 3 games and then go out there and get 3 base hits. And then he comes in the next game, he's not playing. But, it's the game is totally changed out there, Randy. And,
For the worse.
and I don't know if you like the analytics. We're talking about to Billy. It's not good, is it? It's really not when you
Boone
think
every
about it.
day when he's in his office, he gets a script. And they're basically told, okay, if this happens, this guy comes out of the game and he goes in. If the score is this and this guy's pitch count this, and these guys never even played the game.
Yeah.
And it's sad that.
And it
Boone
finally
gets so much
backfired on
crap.
them in the playoffs last year.
And they did the same thing the other day. You're right. They put Devi Garcia in as an
Yeah.
opener. They tried to outthink himself, and then Hap comes in,
Oh,
and they did the same damn thing Friday night. Michael King. I
oh,
talked about yesterday. It says he might be their second best starting pitcher. He's got 9 scoreless innings, and he's in alternate
And the
camp.
guy gave up 3 runs before he ever takes the mound.
and you put the guy for
terrible.
Tampa, Snell, you put Snell in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was pitching with 6 great innings. I mean, he was like throwing seeds and his ball was moving. And you started getting a hunch, but that people, what I hate to tell you, the game of baseball is for fans also, but fans want to see a good pitching game too. And you as a writer, you want to see a good pitching game also. You want to see a guy like Cole would take it like DeGrom. You would pay now. Let me tell you something. You would pay to see DeGrom and Cole pitch against one another. Now that would be fun. That would be great to watch. It's just like, you got to like a catfish Jim Palmer type of pitcher.
Sure.
And you get those, you get those matchup, and the matchup before, when you're flying on the airplane and they give you the score thing and you see the pitchers, probable pitchers, and you say, golly, Pete, this is going to be a good game.
The problem though is that when your era, when they had those matchups, a team could scratch for a run. A guy gets a leadoff double. The next guy comes up. He's going to hit a ground ball to second base. And then you're going to try to get a sac fly. Now, I mean, when you played, did you see shortstops ever striking out 130 times? It's now home run. All they care exit velocity. I was talking to a scout yesterday that told me that all he hears from the Yankees people is for the minor league camps is they worry about exit velocity and they worry about velo for pitchers, and they don't practice infield, and you don't do infield. And you wonder why guys aren't hitting cutoffs. So fundamentally, the game is terrible now. Guys are bigger and stronger. The equipment's better. But when you played, I think you didn't see players not using their head. You couldn't do that nowadays, and you can't yell at the players nowadays. They're not allowed to yell.
Oh, absolutely. And let me tell you something. And these guys are so too big and strong. David Cohn, I was sitting up with David, and these guys have heard it. David Cohn said to me, have you ever seen a fat player pull a muscle? And I said, no, like that. But these guys nowadays, you get like an Aaron Judge, and like Stanton, they'll be great at the beach because they take off their shirt and they're cut. And, they're tight. But they got to have, an athlete has to have, stuff between their ribs, some muscle, some not fat, but skin, at least some to absorb the pressure and stuff. But they don't have any of that. You ever see?
You guys were more mentally tough though. Back in your days, guys, you had probably had done, a lot of people from your era had jobs in the winter and wasn't making this kind of money, and now they expect to has days off. Nobody wants to play every game anymore. They have 13 games in a row coming up. They think they have to get a 6th starter because heaven forbid they can't have their 5 starters go through the rotation without having extra days. It's the mentally toughness that nobody throws the ball as much. They don't hit as much. They don't practice fielding. And the ultimate result is, you have Garrett Cole and DeGrom, and they're striking out more guys, but I think the game today is so much worse than it's.
What the fans love to do? Whenever we played, we always took infield. We always took infield out there. And you know what? And there was fans out there watching. Nowadays, there's hardly any fans. They get there right at the time of the game. When we used to take infield. We're involved in that. And then they used to have the pitchers used to run from foul line to foul line. Foul line to foul line. To your father, hey, how about your father would tell you, right off the bat, he had Billy Connors out there, and these guys, they run and run because, when they pitch with their hips and they pitch with their legs. But these guys, they pull muscles all the time. All these guys, it's just, they run to second base. They try to steal the second base. They pull a muscle. That's why, that's why the DH, you got to have the DH in both leagues because the pitcher's not going to be able to get on first base. They're going to pull a muscle, but they're never on first base anyway. They can't hit anyway. But
I have a question for Billy Jr. I want to know how his father would handle the 5 and 10 Yankees with throwing errors, base running mistakes. Tell me what Billy how he would handle this. Would there be tables overthrown?
We'll get there early we'll get there early one morning and he'll practice.
That's exactly right.
We'll have practice there. Oh, absolutely. We did that a few times. You get on the trip and you lose like 3 or 4 or 5 ball games. He said, we'll see you at 11 o'clock. We're going to take some infield, like that. And the game starts at, of course, 7 o'clock. Took infield. Hey, that's what he did, right? Hey, Billy, your father would do that.
No, absolutely. Think about the day Thurman Munson's plane crash, right? Mm-hmm. There was a practice that morning. Mm-hmm. That was an off day. Mm-hmm. And you guys had to have practice that day. And I mean, I remember Thurman hanging with Dad during practice, and then he flew home.
Yeah, no.
He wouldn't
But
take
you-
this losing streak lightly, though, would he, Billy?
Well, yeah, he hated to lose at anything, but I mean, he couldn't handle, like you're talking about, errors being made, mistakes being made. You know, if you get beat, you get beat. He was real good at, he was a different guy between the lines. When the game was over and he left the ballpark, he could shut it off. It was kind of neat to watch. He would sit down, he would have a drink alone, his first drink alone, and you could see him go over the whole game. I should have stuck with my starter another inning. I should have laid down a bunt in the seventh. I should have done this. You could just see him go over the whole game. And some of those days it took longer than others. I mean, the day that Yastrzemski tagged out Dale Berra and Bobby Meacham, boom, boom. You know, that was out number 1 and 2 in the 8th inning, right? If we keep one of those guys at third, we're scoring a run in a 1-run game. That would took 45 minutes for him to kind of get over it all. But it usually was 10, 15 minutes. You could see him go over it, and then he'd look up, say, "Hey, what's going on?" That meant he flushed the toilet, and it was gone. We're not talking about baseball anymore tonight, because you have to let it go. As Ron will tell you, if you wear it all the time, it'll drive you absolutely insane.
One of my best friends is a guy named Brian Kingman that played for the A's for Billy, and we've been.
Oh yeah, pitcher. Was he a pitcher?
Yeah.
He was the last. He's still the last 20-game loser, right-hander. We're close
Yeah, I
friends.
remember.
We've been
Yeah,
to 4
yeah.
Super Bowls together, and he played. And he's told me a lot of stories. We're close friends. And when I was a Phillies writer for 17 years, and when Charlie Manuel was there, Charlie would tell me playing for Billy in Minnesota. So I got a lot of good Billy stories. And I love the intensity. And he like Billy said there, he wouldn't take lightly to, everybody's going to make errors, but there's a difference between a fundamental error of running yourself out of an inning, or a mental error that you're throwing to the wrong base. If you throw the right base and it's a bad throw, that's one thing. But when you're throwing to the wrong base and you're not using your head, those are the kind of things that I think that Billy would be watching this team now. I mean, maybe young Billy.
Billy and I were actually talking. How many of the outfielders out there throw about 10 feet over the
Cutoff man.
cutoff?
Frazier did that on the Sunday.
Oh, God, you don't do that. You better hit them right here so they could get the ball, and throw it.
Yeah.
Right off the bat. If you miss a cutoff, right off the bat, he's going to take another base, and right off the bat. See, they don't play games like that. They don't play small ball anymore. They don't play first and third anymore.
That's because
They
the
don't
analytics say
They don't.
hit the home runs.
No, they don't even know what it is. They're sitting down watching their computers. Well, this guy he got 4 at bats. No, 15 at bats. And got 6 hits off of them. But but they don't understand. They're going to throw different pitchers, different pitching. It's a different time in the lineup. It's a different play, and everything's different. Every at bat is different. And, and I look at this and I go nuts with this, and I can't watch it. And we're up at the stadium when we didn't have the problem. We're up at the suites and stuff, and we're watching. I'm sitting with Mickey Rivers. I'm sitting with Sparky, or I'm sitting with Gossage. And we can't watch it anymore because these guys are not bringing, they strike it out. This is all they do, strike out. And we're watching the game on TV a lot. And the ball's right here. They're missing the ball, and they throw it, and they swinging at curveballs 10 feet outside. And Stanton, here's a guy that, he needs to wait for a fastball every time he gets up. You don't swing at a pitch on the outside, but you don't going to hit it.
I just talked to a scout about him yesterday, and he brought something up. If you watch Stanton, he has that stance that is so closed.
Yeah.
And the scout told me, and I never thought of it, and I'd like to ask Stanton someday. He thinks that Stanton has never recovered from being hit in the head in 2012 or 14 or whatever that was with the Marlins. And because if you watch him, if anyone ever throws inside to him, he gets very visibly upset. And I think that that he's a little
He feels it.
gun shy, even though he's 6'6", 235 pounds. When you get hit in the noggin, I mean, it's something that I think affects you for life. And I think that that's affected him because he's never really been the same player since he left Florida.
And you know, Randy, the year before he came to the Yankees, when he hit the 59 home runs, it seemed to me that the Marlins were so far out of the race that they were just pitching to him. In other words, they were not pitching in or giving him a hard time. It's almost like the other players knew that, and he's not the same player that he was when he was.
No, he's not.
Yeah, plus, hey, playing down in Florida, you don't hear the boos down there like you do up in New York.
No.
And
No.
you know, I mean, you got 3,000 people out there, you know, just doing the Cuban dances out there. And, you know, in New York, you know, these guys got their baseballs on the side of them ready to throw at you. And, you know, I mean, hey, let me tell you something, you know, playing in New York, I don't care how big a star and how good athlete you are, a lot of players cannot play in New York. It's not easy to do that because people, you know, people are so used to being the star all the time. Now, all of a sudden you come to New York, you're in a slump. If you look at Clint Frazier, you watch him, Randy, you watch Clint, he looks like he's defeated when he's swinging out there now. I mean, because he knows he doesn't know if he's going to play. He knows his swing is not good. He's thinking up there. When you don't think when you hitting, you swing at a strike. You see I tell Cash asked me to do some hitting about 10 years, 12 years ago. Asked me, was I interested? He said, how would you teach hitting? I said, you see the ball and you swing and you hit it. And he looked at me, he said, no, you can't, you know, you're not going to work. You know, I don't know anything about computers. You know, hey, I want to see a ball like a hit. That's all I want to do.
That's not good enough now. Now you have to hit it on the angle. You have to try for home runs. It's terrible. And again, the game was better when you played. It was I know the guys are bigger and stronger. But you're right. You haven't figured. I mean, clearly they don't play small ball now. It's try to hit home runs. And you're right. Keep it simple. Everyone but nowadays. Also, which you just made a point, guys aren't mentally tough now. And you have to be mentally tough to be in New York. Sonny Gray was a guy who came into New York, had some success in Oakland, and he had some success in Cincinnati, but that's a whole different animal when you have cheerleader media that's not going to be tough on you. And I'm sure that you had tough media times.
When you had 100 papers following you.
Yeah.
You know, when you're in Cincinnati or Philly, let me tell you something.
I was a writer in Philly for 17 years. You
know how it is. You know, hey, they'll follow you home.
Close to Philly.
They'll follow you home. And you got to have that toughness. And the best guy that did small ball was Billy's father, because he understood the game because he had to when he played with the Yankees, and when he had all those other great hitters, he had to play small ball, and he had to get on base. And you know, and he knew that when he's on first base, he knew if there's a base hit, he has to be on third base. He knew that.
The player's
and
missing
he knew
today.
that he has to get. Yeah, and those when you had Maris and when you had Mantle, and they want to get that ribby.
You being down in Atlanta, Mark Lemke did that for the Braves for all those years.
Exactly. He got on base and he stole. And, you know, and people don't look, you know, the players on the team, they look at those guys, how successful and how much we needed these guys to get on base. And that's why Thurman was so good, because Thurman was such a good player because he knew how to get on base. He knew how to get on base. And that's what he did. And hey, you know, we could talk about it all day long, but baseball is going to eventually go back, you know, to the good brand of baseball. We hope, Randy. And
I don't think it is.
Talking about the pitching matchups, that would be as exciting when you were younger as you know, two offensive clubs playing. And I remember there was a game on, and they said later on in San Francisco will be the Dodgers and the Giants, Koufax against Marichal. And of course, you know, you couldn't go on any of the extra channels. There was no MLB channel or anything. And we're just wondering what's going on in this game, Koufax against Marichal. And it was hard to get the sports news right away in those days. And it turned out that was the day that Marichal hit John Roosevelt in the head with the bat. And Willie Mays had to break up the fight. And that was a big controversy for that. I believe it was either 64 or 65, one of those years. And that was the controversy of the year, that incident between the two of them.
They talk, oh gosh.
I remember talking to Mike Shannon once. You talk about things that you can't do nowadays. And remember Mike Shannon, the long
Oh,
time
sure, with
announcer?
St. Louis, sure.
Well, okay. You brought up Charlie Manuel earlier, which reminded me of a great story. And, you know, my father's first managerial job was the Denver Bears, which was the AAA affiliate for the Twins back then. And on that team was Charlie Manuel, Greg Nettles, and the closer / pitching coach was Art Fallon, who became Dad's pitching coach at almost all his stops after that as a manager. Well, the next year, 69, Dad got the Twins job, and he called up Charlie and Greg Nettles, and he literally put Charlie in the game to pinch run for Harmon Killebrew late in the game because Charlie ran pretty good. And Charlie said he was out there about 30, 40 seconds and looked around, and next thing you know, he was kind of excited to be in the big leagues, and then he got picked off. And he came back to the dugout and, you know, threw his bat and helmet and sat down and was all angry. And my father sat down next to him and put his arm around him and said, "Don't feel bad, kid. It's not your fault. It's my fault." Charlie looked at him and goes, "What do you mean it's your fault, Skip?" He goes, "I'm the dumb son of a bitch that put you in."
The funny story. The funny story on Shannon that I was going to tell is that Shannon's facing Drysdale for the first time, and he gets in the box and he's digging and digging and digging.
Oh,
And he said Drysdale looks at the mound and just starts. And he says that Shannon says he got on the ground, his hands and knees, and starts putting the dirt back in the spot and waves to him like, sorry, because he thought he was going to get beamed.
oh yeah, they'll hit you. Drysdale will hit you in a second.
Yeah.
He'll hit you
Yeah,
in a
Drysdale
second.
was
You
tough.
knew that. You knew that. But let me tell you something. I know that Lindy's going to hate me because he wants to get off here at 9 o'clock, but it's Lindy's time to eat. But hey, Randy, Billy.
What happened?
We lost your sound, Ron.
Ron's in the penalty box for making fun of me.
Well,
You guys have fun on here.
yeah, I got to say thanks to Tiffany Lynn too. I didn't know about this show until she turned me on to this, and I'm definitely here because of her, and
Where you live,
appreciate
Billy?
her very much. I'm in Arlington, Texas.
Oh, okay. I'm heading
I'm
out
in
there.
Fort Worth today. I'm in Fort Worth today.
I'm
I'm
the
in
Yankee series in
Yeah,
3 weeks. I'm going to check out their new ballpark. I've covered games in 51 different stadiums, and that'll be number 52. I don't know if you've been to the game at the new Arlington yet.
Absolutely.
But, I'm excited to see the new ballpark.
Well, look me up.
Get by the stadium, track me down. I'll come say hello.
I mean, only because I'm Billy Martin's son, I'll have an adult beverage with you. Otherwise, I wouldn't. But
I'll be working. I can't have one, but I'm staying an extra day to have to see some friends, and I think I'm going to take a ride to my heritage is from Colgate, Oklahoma, a little town north of the and I'm going to take a ride up there and see if I can find a little diner in this one red light town.
nice.
Hey, Randy, tell us a little bit about your days with the Phillies. That should have been pretty good.
Yeah.
I was there for 17 years. I covered them from 96 until 2010 or so, and they were bad. I was through the Fergosi my first year, 4 years of Francona, loved Francona. We're both Pittsburghers, so we're pretty close. And then I had Boa, and Boa and I were Bo was actually got fired 2 days earlier because of a fight with me, an argument, and then we've always been very close before and after. But oh my God, he was the closest thing to Billy probably as a manager. That's what everybody says. But Philly's a tough town. I did a book on Harry Callis a few years ago, and that was fun to get to be tight with some players from the 70s. Mike Schmidt did the special introduction for my book, and Ryan Howard did the forward. But I got to be friends with some of the players from that era, and I love that era ball. But yeah, Philly, I had some bad years. Then I was around for the World Championship year, and Charlie was there. Charlie let them play. He could be tough at times, but he's not a softie by any imagine. I don't know if Charlie's ever been on your show. He's so misunderstood, and for a few years in Philly, he was called dumb because of his accent. And Charlie told me a story once that I wrote, that when he was younger, he was in high school and he has to get married. He's going to have a kid in senior in high school. Well, he's a straight A student. He was being recruited by North Carolina for basketball, Michigan for football, and he signed with baseball because he had 11 brothers and sisters. And he worked a graveyard shift from midnight to 6, and he ended up turning pro and ends up playing for Billy. Writes poetry. So I was Billy. Charlie and I would have a lot of good talks about old time baseball, and I love that. I talked to Goose 2 or 3 times on the phone. Now, when we get into long talks, I talk to Reggie Jackson a lot, and I've been a Hall of Fame voter for a lot of years, and I love hearing. I don't vote steroid guys, and I just Jim Thome once told me, and he was in tears, telling me how it pained him to see guys passing Harmon Killebrew and Willie Stargell. And in my house, I have a memorabilia room, and I have 2 Barry Bonds game used hats, one from his rookie year when he had hair, one from the Giants year. And the size difference on the hat is 7 1/8 to 7 5/8.
Yeah.
4 sizes different from when he had hair to lost hair. And I always think of that Thome conversation where he said, "Don't you dare vote for them." And then Reggie Jackson told me the same thing one time. And I'm a really tough voter, and I just will not give a vote to an A-Rod. I'm sorry. I appreciate A-Rod as being a great player. I was with Bonds a little bit in Pittsburgh, great player, one of the best I've ever seen. But to me, statistics in baseball are more important than any other sport, and they cheated the meaningful statistics. And
Let me ask you a question now.
Well,
Randy, let me ask you really a question.
Sorry, Ron. I want to.
Okay, real quick. Now, I'm doing everything with my book to get Thurman into the Hall of Fame. Do I have a chance? Wait. Do I have a chance to get him into the Hall of Fame if the writers see what type of guys off the field? Be honest with me.
Here's the problem. The problem is that he's not on the writer's ballot. So I still think Thurman is going to be in the Hall of Fame someday. And it's easier the route now because it's on one of those ballots that they have every couple of years, the Veterans Committee ballots. And there's only, I believe, 16 people that vote on that. Now, to me, I look at Harold Baines getting in compared to Thurman, and that's an absolute joke. And I look and I say, Harold Baines wasn't even a great player, but he played a long time. When I was in Philly, I used to be tight with Jamie Moyer. And Jamie's like, "Are you going to vote for me for the Hall of Fame?" And I said, "Jamie, I love you, man, but I can't vote for you because you played a million years and you racked up stats. To me, you were always a good to very good player, and I want to vote greatness." And to me, the Thurman that I remember, he was great. And I think he was great long enough. And I think that how he died, that he never had a chance to come down from his career. So to me, and the one guy that doesn't have the stats that I would vote in, I would vote Roger Maris. And he's one guy that I think what he did, that statistic, those 2 MVP seasons, the pressure that he had, and he was a Gold Glove guy. That would be one guy that if he was on a ballot that I would say he wasn't great long enough, but that home run title meant so much for the game that I would vote him in.
I was 7 years old then. He breaks the record and becomes the most hated man in baseball.
That's sad. It wouldn't happen nowadays.
Randy, what about Mattingly?
Mattingly, he was a tough call for me because I kind of put Mattingly in the Dave Parker category, in that Mattingly for a few years was best in the game, but he wasn't great long enough. And to me, he just misses out on that he wasn't great long enough. And being a Pittsburgher and watching Parker in that 75, the 79, 80 era, I look at him and it was tough because Mattingly was a great player. I think that and to me, the Hall of Fame should be for the Mantles and the DiMaggios. I don't think there should be, hey, I grew up 10 minutes from where Bill Mazeroski lived for most of his life. And my dad would tell me stories, and I was a shortstop and a second baseman when I got older and didn't have the arm, and I would learn to play second base and turn a double play. So I love the Mazeroski, but to me, Mazeroski, it's a joke that he's in the Hall of Fame. He just
one swing in the bat got him in the Hall of Fame.
And the fact that he was a great defensive second baseman for a long time. And, you know, the key when you say get Thurman in is you have to have somebody on that committee that's a politician.
Correct.
Tony La Russa is the guy who got Harris Benjamin.
Do I have a chance to get him in?
Well,
if this book shows.
The way you get him in is to track down, get some people on your show that are on that veterans committee. That's how, because there's only going to be 16 votes. And like, how did Harold Baines get in? Tony La Russa got him in. Tony La Russa said, look, I'll vote for your guy if you vote for my guy. I don't know how he's not in. And I'm not a big owner Hall of Fame guy, but to me, Steinbrenner was a big enough guy in baseball that deserved to be in the Hall of Fame.
That's a no-brainer.
Absolutely.
Right. I think so. And I hate, I mean, I didn't vote Messina. To me, Messina, if he was ever great, it was a couple years in Baltimore. Good pitcher. And people get angry with me like I'm dissing him because he wasn't, I say he wasn't a Hall of Famer, but there's nothing wrong with being judged by me as a very good player because my status for Hall of Fame is really great. The two guys I voted for that never got in were Davey Concepcion and Steve Garvey. And Concepcion, I thought in an era when shortstops didn't hit a lot of home runs, he had 15, and I thought he was kind of a glue to that Cincinnati Big Red Machine that, to me, in the 70s, he was the best. It's funny. I used to be tight with Boa, and Concepcion would get all these gold gloves, and it just infuriated Boa. So Boa told me one time that he went up to Concepcion once and said, "Hey, is your middle name Elmer?" And Davey said, "No, why?" He goes, "Well, every time I look in the box where it says E Concepcion."
Hey, let me ask you something, Randy. How do I get these Hall of Fame voters, these guys? How do I get their names? How do I get them?
I think they're on Wikipedia. Who, if you go to each veteran committee, I think it shows you the 16 people, and it's usually some executives, a couple Hall of Famers. What's your thought on Pete? I have a pretty good relationship with Pete.
For baseball, he should be in. For baseball, he should be in.
You know, if you're gonna let some of these other guys in,
that's right. What do you got? Look at hey, he deserves to be in. Why? Because he made a mistake and whatever, and he's a different type of animal. You know, and the writers didn't like him.
He's a gamer. He's a gamer. They don't have gamers nowadays.
He was the best. He was the best. And you knew that.
Yep, I agree.
Joe, goodbye. Hey, Billy, goodbye. Randy, it was wonderful to talk to you. We want to talk again, big guy. We want you on the show. Billy, we want you on the show again. Anything you need from us, you just let us know. We love you, big guys. Randy, have a good time. Bring the Yankees some win. And Billy, I hope your TCU guy get drafted #1, make a lot of money. And you can, enjoy yourself, big guy, okay?
Thanks,
Ron.
Love y'all. Bye, Randy. Bye, Billy. Bye, Joe. Bye, Lenny. Bye-bye, big guys. Bye-bye.